And then I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everyone see okay? Good, good. A couple quick things as we get started. One is, if you've been to any of my sessions before, I love a lot of engagement or interaction. I just think it makes it so much more rich of an experience because I obviously don't have all the answers and there's so much experience in the room. So please use the chat box to comment, to ask questions, because I think that's a really great way to communicate. And then of course, we're a small group, so you can unmute and ask me anything that you want, because I really want this to be beneficial for your businesses. So if there's a business specific question, feel free to ask. But I'd like to start by having everyone just introduce themselves in the chat. So just quickly, your name, your business, what you do, and maybe a social media handle. So we can start to get to know each other and follow each other if we do not. The other thing is, I promised you guys prizes. Who doesn't like prizes? So what we're going to do is we're going to save the chats and then just randomly select anyone from the chat that makes a comment for the prizes. And you might be wondering, well, what are the prizes? Well, the first one we have is this, my reflection cards and journal. So it's my 12 cards that I made this year, my favorite 25 journal prompts, and then 3 exercises and a journal. That's the first one. And then the second one is, this one's a good one, is Kayla Gray, if you guys know her. So this is her discovery kit. So it's her 4 signature scents. She makes perfume and candles, and they're all are amazing, but then you can try them all and then figure out which scent you like. And the thing that I love about her, because I'm super sensitive to different smells and stuff, is it's a clean fragrance line. So there isn't anything in it that triggers allergies or whatever. So that is the second prize. All right, so let's get started. We're going to stay right to our 1 hour because I know we're all busy. So let's jump in. So creating a winning strategy. I think all of you on the call know me, but I'll just introduce myself first. My name's Jen. I've been doing business strategy for 13 years now. I worked with companies from Uber and Lyft and Yelp and the Phoenix Zoo, all the way to solopreneurs and even some pre-revenue companies that were looking for funding. So I've spanned the gamut. I really enjoy working with small businesses. I love working with medium-sized businesses and their executive teams as well, but really, like, my heart is with small business, and really I just know how much courage it takes to start a small business. And I want to be able to give small businesses the tools that large enterprise companies have. So I'm formally trained in the entrepreneurial operating system. And that system is designed for businesses with $5 to $50 million in revenue. And a lot of fast-paced growth companies use it. And I've worked with many of them. And what I realized is those tools are so applicable for everybody and every stage of business. I've made some adjustments for some things that our earlier stage businesses need. But I've heard from so many times from CEOs and leaders who were like, man, if I had this like earlier in my entrepreneurial journey, this would have been so great. So that was my passion of bringing it to everybody. Because sometimes I hear, oh, well, when I get big enough, I'll worry about those sorts of things. And my whole premise in life and purpose is that we need to start worrying about them now and build great from the start. So I know many of you have been in business for many years, but at any point in the process, I think it's important to check in. And I'm sure that if you have been in business for many years, you have some version of strategy. So, and please chime in with anything that you've learned along the way, because again, I think we're better together when we learn together. So I want to do something, and let's hope it works, is the first thing I start with any company is I really you need to think about and understand what stage of business you're in. Because I think we get so caught up in, we've just got to grow for growth's sake. And that might not make sense for the stage you're in. It might not be where you are. So we really just need to understand, like, where are we and so that helps level set our expectations of what we should be expecting, what we should be planning for, what we should be forecasting for. So first, I'm going to launch a poll. And I would like you to just answer this question. So the question is, what stage of business are you in? Are you pre-revenue? You have an idea in the startup phase. So that's typically the 1 to 3 year period of getting something going. The growth and expansion phase, you're really like, you know what you're doing, you're solidly running and growing and scaling. And then the established business where you've been in business for many, many years and it's tried and true. So I'm going to launch this. Let's see if it works. And then if you just click the answer, it'll give us a good sense of where everybody is in the room. All righty, so I'm going to end the poll and then I'm going to share the results. So it looks like the majority of us are in the startup and growth expansion phase, which is where 99% of businesses are. I think it is so, there's got to be a big sigh of relief when you kind of get out of that startup phase and transition to the growth expansion. But what I've heard from so many other CEOs is it's just a new set of problems, right? It's kind of like parenting, like every stage is hard. It just changes and adjusts the problems. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on stage of business or lessons that they've learned? I know some of you have owned multiple businesses throughout the years. Judy, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, so it's interesting because like feel like I'm in a quote unquote restart, even though like I marked it growth expansion because I've been in years for a long time. Sometimes like for me, like I pivoted a little bit. So like it's hard to know exactly which stage I fit into, because when you pivot, it some ways it feels like I'm starting up again, like I'm a restart up, but in other ways I feel like I'm in the growth expansion phase because I do have a lot of experience. So I wanted to throw that out and get your thoughts on it. And because I feel like I'm probably not the only one who has experienced that. And it's weird when you're in multiple stages.
That is an excellent point. And it beautifully illustrates like this isn't a linear progress, right? It's not like you go up and then stay up, hopefully, or go down. Like you go back and forth, up and down. It's much more fluid than it looks on this slide. And I think the thing that's cool though is that what you said is that experience, that's transferable skills and experience. So when you are starting something new, like maybe the idea is new, but you become more and more experienced as an entrepreneur. Kelly, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I know you've grown many businesses.
I like every stage. It's probably why I keep starting new businesses. Yep. I'm on my 4th, and my husband, we've started his 5th. So it's I like all the stages, but I liked all the stages of parenting too. So I think it just depends. I mean, it's hard, right? But reflecting back, you go, oh, well, that was fun. Oh, I missed that part, or so if you can have good takeaways from each of the steps. And a good mindset, obviously, doesn't matter what stage you're in. If you have a good mindset.
Yeah. I love that so much, that like the reflection, like it could be really hard in the moment, but like when you look back and then like thinking about what was so great about it or the lessons you've learned. And man, if you love every stage of parenting, that is a special gift. And maybe with some
reflecting, yeah, with distance.
Awesome. All right. So once we figured that out and kind of checked in generally with where we would say this current business is and where we're at, then this talks to the fluidity that we were talking about, Judy, is what I like to do is break into 3-month increments, so 90-day segments of what season are we in. So you could be in a tremendously high growth period of your business. And if you try to do that for 12 months out of the year, it's not going to end well. You're going to be burnt out. You're going to be exhausted. Like humans aren't meant to do that. And so it's really important that if you're in a high growth period, that you have the right resources around you, that you ask for help, that you have time for self-care. But you really thinking about, all right, for the next 90 days, like where am I, regardless of the stage of your business? Because if there's realities to life, right? If you have something going on personally, you're not going to be able to give 100% to your business. Or if it's like, no, like I'm locked in, it's go time and this is a really busy season and this is what I'm going to focus on, that's great. So but just recognizing where you are. I was working with a business owner a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about this, and we were talking about what her plans were for next year and what she wanted to do. And her first thing off the top of her head was like, oh, I need to double my business next year. I'm like, that's incredible. Awesome. We can do it. Let's build a plan. And then I'm like, I should say, you're pregnant with twins. And we just talked about wanting to take 6 months off for maternity leave. So maybe this isn't the year to plan doubling your revenue. Like maybe it's just not the right season. And she was like, oh my gosh, I just live in such compartmentalized worlds that I didn't even put those two together, which is what we all do. But it's just important to understand. So I'm going to launch one more poll. And just where do you think you are in the next 90 days? So we're looking at maybe not December, because December is just insane. But let's do January to March. Like, where do you forecast that you're going to be? Like, what season do you feel like it's going to be for you? Yeah, and choice 4 is supposed to just say a season of implementing. Cool. All right. I think we got most people answered. Okay, I'm going to close it, share results. So interesting. We have a busy family season, a season of building, and a season of implementing. And we have no hustling, which makes my heart a little bit happy because I really just am not really about that culture, but there is a time and place for it in short spurts. So we've got a lot going on. So that's another piece that you really need to think about as you plan for 2023 is what season do I forecast I'm going to be in 3 months? Sometimes you can go out and be like, this is what I want to be in for each quarter, but I really caution against that because as we've all seen, like we don't know what the future holds. So for this piece, I try to just forecast the next 3 months. Otherwise we could be just setting ourselves up for failure that we just don't know. So I always have you reassess that every 90 days. All right, moving along. So this webinar, I wanted to really dive into my top don'ts and my top do's of strategic planning that I have seen work really well for businesses of all sizes, and that didn't work. I really wanted to just give you the high level. I think strategic planning is pretty intuitive. There's some nuance to it, of course, but we all kind of generally understand what it is. So this is where I wanted to say, like, of the hundreds and hundreds of hours I've been in boardrooms and meetings and all the things, this is what I've seen. So I want to start with the don'ts because I want to end on the positives of the do's, but here's my top 3 don'ts. So we talked a little bit about this, but don't set goals that are disconnected from your purpose, mission, and values. So with every client, strategic planning client, I always start at the ground of like, what are your values? What's important to you? What do you want? How do you want to behave? How do you want people to experience your company? How do you want to grow? How do you want to hire? What are your core values? That is like the lens with which you look through the world. Then it's your why. I think some of you have heard me say this 100 times, but really, what is your why above making money? Like, what is the purpose that you got into this business? And everyone has a purpose. Of course, money and financial piece is part of it, but there's a deeper meaning for why you chose that work. So really grounding in that. And then lastly, like, what is your mission? What are you here to achieve? And what happens sometimes is we have these big theoretical conversations. Everyone comes up with this, we're good. But then the rubber really hits the road. And it's like, okay, but I also like really need to generate income or revenue. And I really need to get this business off the ground. And we kind of throw some of this out the window. And so I really want to make sure that when you're setting your goals, they're aligned to what you said you wanted to do and achieve from a bigger picture. So the purpose, sometimes this is really hard for business owners because we are so trained to talk about our what. And this is beyond our what. This is our why. And people are going to buy why you do it more than what you do. And that is straight from Mr. Simon Sinek, which if you haven't watched his TED Talk or read his books, Start With Why is a really great book recommendation, but really getting crystal clear on that and then communicating that. Sometimes we think it's like our little dirty secret that we can't tell anybody, but really sharing that with the world will connect and draw the right people that are your people. Because sometimes, have you ever had a client where it's like, you can't quite put your finger on it, but it's just not the right fit? Like they don't get you, you don't quite get them. A lot of times it's purpose misalignment or it's values misalignment. And having that really articulated will attract the right people to you. All right, the next piece, and this is more of a tactical piece, the reason why it's so critical is what we tend to do as entrepreneurs is we get shiny object syndrome. And so we go into business to do X, and then someone else comes and says, let's do this. And then you do this, and then you do something else. And then you have this collaboration over here. And then you get this idea to make this product. And now you're like all over the board and your arrows are going in a lot of different directions. Your purpose all helps you point in the same direction. So you could have different business units, different products, all of that, but that it's pointing in the right direction. And I often bring business owners back to that because as they get excited about something, or if a customer asks for something new, they start to create all these different things. I'm guilty of it for sure. And it's like, okay, but wait, because that takes time, money, capacity. Let's bring it back. Like is that aligned and does it fit our higher purpose? And if it doesn't, then maybe we should think about not doing it at the moment. Does that make sense for everyone? Good. I like the thumbs up, Judy. Yeah. All right. So don't forget, I was one last thing, because this like hits home because I had experienced it literally yesterday. I was with a larger organization who's been in business for over 50 years, and they're dealing with something really hard. And we were going through an issue to try to get to a solution. And they said something to the effect of, yeah, I understand all this like theoretical conversation is great, but what do we do today? Because we really have this big issue. And that's where it gets really hard. But that's where like, I think businesses that are going to be successful in the long run really double down and say, okay, this is what we really want to do. This is where we want to go. This is what we want to achieve. And so we're not going to throw it out the window when things get hard. And when we refocus on the values, a clearer path became apparent. So make sure that you keep that in mind. The other thing is, which is kind of the story I was just telling, is sometimes, especially if we have a large purpose, we can feel like we're over here on this side of the mountain, and then we got to like hike down, cross a valley, river, and then all the way over here is where we want to go. And so it's like back to that theoretical conversation. Yes, my purpose is to do X, but right now, like I have to actually like feed my family and have a business. So what do I do today? So it's really important to think about not throwing it out the window and how can you do short-term steps to get you to your long-term results. So maybe there are some things you have to do short-term. And so I work with some entrepreneurs who are like, well, maybe I need to take another consulting job, or maybe I need to have a part-time job, or maybe I need to do something while I'm growing that business. Totally good. And I would say that's not out of alignment with your bigger purpose, as long as you have clarity on what are the triggers for when that would change. Like when is it that you take a next step? How would you grow so that you're still marching towards your purpose? Sometimes it just doesn't look exactly like we had planned the first day of business. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on that concept?
I can just say I agree.
Thank you. It's I've been feeling lately, for me personally, a lot on the left-hand side by the little guy, and like looking over like, oh, it's so close and so far away. All right. Number 2. This is a big one. Do not set goals in silos, especially revenue goals. And Allison, you may have some thoughts on revenue goals. This is what happens with small and large organizations. So for larger organizations, departments set their goals, right? And they might not they might overlap, they might not with other departments. And it's like you're operating in two literal silos and no one knows what they're doing. And obviously that's not good for the overall organization. For personal or for smaller businesses, a lot of times what I see is we set our goals in silos of like, well, these are my business goals. These are my personal goals. And what the truth and the reality of it is we are all one person. And if we don't take both sides into consideration, we're going to do what that lady is that I told you, like she's pregnant with twins, but she has this in her head. Somebody told her along the line, you have to double your business in year 2. But there wasn't that communication that, oh, you know what, maybe that's not the best goal. And I'm not saying that it would be impossible, but the question that you need to ask yourself is, what's the best long-term solution for the whole business owner? Because you want to be here for the long run. And if we do things that are continually incredibly challenging and taxing without any periods of rest, that is a recipe for burnout. So what I do with companies is I start with this check-in. These are my wheels of life, but they're literally everywhere. I was informed a couple weeks ago that Oprah has one too. That's pretty good. I think it's like 16 segments, but these wheels are a really great visual reminder to just check in and see where you are on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of these areas. So I do both business health and I do your life health, because like we just talked about, they need to overlap. And so as I'm setting my plan and I'm starting to think about 2023, I would check in. So how fulfilled do you feel on each of these areas? And then I look at it. Now, the important thing to take away is sometimes like our brains are wired to always look for the like lowest number and be like, oh my gosh, I've got to fix that. And that's not necessarily what you want to think about. What you want to think about is, how do I feel about that number? Like, for instance, on the wheel of life, if your fun is really low, but you know you're in a really busy season of work or family or whatever it is, you've intentionally made that choice. So what I would say is, when you're planning for the next year, what do you want more of? What do you want less of? So if it is like, man, I really am missing fun, then set an intention or a goal around, okay, I need to build in some more fun. But if it's like, no, I'm good because I'm fulfilled in these other areas, totally fine. But it's really important to have some awareness for how you feel in each of these areas, because it's what's driving our subconscious mind and our self-talk. And so it's in there. We just need to have a visual representation before you set any goals. All right. Next one. This one is a big one. Don't forget to review strategy and tactics regularly. So the difference, I want to make a distinction between strategy and tactics. Strategy is your overall arching plan. So it's your big plan of how you're going to execute your quarter, your year, what your goals are. Tactics are the methods with which you use to get the results that you want. So a lot of times we'll do different, like this shows up in marketing a lot, or sales, we'll do these different things, we'll try these different things, but we don't actually go back and look at the numbers, at the analytics of like, did that work? Did that not work? What was my ROI? Is it successful? Is there something I could change? If a lot of the bigger companies will do A/B testing for marketing. Does anyone do that here? Kelly probably does, but it's marketing, it's part of her world. But A/B testing is, if you're going to do an email, you send it out with 2 different either subject lines, or you change it and to see which one performs better. And then actually looking at the results. So you would be surprised at how often business owners create these beautiful annual plans and then put them in the drawer and don't look at them again. And that is a tragedy. And when you build consistency, you're going to build momentum. And I'm going to show you that in just 1 second. But what everyone needs to do is decide what is the cadence that's right for you. So maybe a weekly goal review isn't the perfect cadence for you. That's okay. But what is? Is it a monthly review? Is it a weekly team meeting? Is it a quarterly review? Like, what is the right cadence? And again, there's no right answer. I'm happy to talk through like what I see most common and what I see effective, but it's really like checking in with yourself and like, when should I regularly check in with my goals to make sure that I'm on track and that my arrows are still going in the right direction? Would anyone like to share what they do for their goal check-ins?
Last year you did our strategy session, and I'm looking forward to doing it again with you this year. So the people that I did the strategy session with, we met quarterly so we could be each other's accountability partners, to say, like, because then it just makes you review it, number one, and go, oh, we're meeting. I got to look at my numbers. I got to look at my stuff. And so it was good accountability and, a reminder to consistently look at it. Because you had other people that you were, responsible to telling. And then obviously the more people you have on your team, you can, set those meetings. Typically I meet with my CFO monthly, like, okay, where are the numbers at? Well, how are we looking? Okay, I need to, up it or lower certain things. My donations seem to be usually way out of whack. But so it's nice to have somebody who's somebody besides yourself to be accountable to.
Yeah, that is so true. Accountability partner increases the likelihood of success by it's crazy amount, like by 94%. And so having somebody to review your goals with, especially if you're a solopreneur, is so important. And to Kelly's point, Kelly has a team, but sometimes being with peer-to-peer, so other business owners, is a great accountability peer group because you can have different conversation than maybe with team members. So that's great. Thank you for sharing. So I want to share this graph, and it's a little confusing, so I'm going to walk you through it. So somebody drew this for me on a whiteboard years ago, and it blew my mind. But so this isn't quite as pretty as it was drawn, but this is the power of momentum. So what happens if we do annual planning? We're oh my gosh, everyone says I need to have a annual strategic plan. I'm a business owner, so I'm going to do it at the end of the year or early in the beginning of the year. So you do this plan, but if you have no meeting cadence, then the momentum pretty much you're super excited, and then you put it in a drawer and it just kind of dies. If you decide that you're going to do quarterly like Kelly did, then you have this ramp up, because as humans, what happens is we get super excited and then we're exhausted from the planning. So we lose a little bit of momentum, but then it's oh my gosh, I have this quarterly coming up. So I'm going to ramp back up. I'm going to get the things done that I need to. And so our momentum goes up. So we're making these pulses that increase the things that we accomplish throughout the year, because by putting in those quarterly meetings. Now you can take it a step further and do a monthly review, and then the same thing happens. So now you have more pulses, and your productivity goes up even further. And then if you have a team doing the weekly meetings, that's where you get really good, turning the flywheel, consistent momentum. But the key is what is it for you that will work and is sustainable? If you are a team of one, meeting weekly with yourself may or may not be the best idea. However, I do every Friday for myself, I do a weekly review, and then I do figure out what I need to pull forward. I also think about what are the lessons I learned that week and what do I want more of and less of. So there's smaller versions of those meetings that you can do. But the point here is picking a cadence is so critical. The other thing, you may have heard of this before, but I love these, is CEO days. So we get so busy working on our business that we forget to work in our business. No, wait, other way around. We get so busy working in our business that we forget to work on our business. And so if you block, I have business owners that do this weekly, and I have business owners that do this monthly. But doing a CEO day means you're only doing work that literally only you can do. And sometimes CEOs will do a lot of their work, and then in the afternoon, they take the day off to do some rest and relaxation. But what are those things? So checking in, reviewing analytics, maybe checking in with your QuickBooks or your accountant, getting some things in place, generating content, those sorts of things. Block a day. At least one day a month is the recommendation, to have a CEO day where it's just your day. So it's no external meetings. It's just your day to do what you need to do. And then you will see like all the things that are on the bottom of your list that are things that like, quote, good business owners should do will quickly get checked off because you have that time and space. I have tried weekly and my schedule right now just won't allow that. So I have now gone to monthly. So one day a month is where I, do my accounting, my reconciling, I do some content generation ideas. And also I try to like take a walk for myself and just breathe, and because you need that space to think and be creative as the leader of your organization. I was working with a business who was in a high growth phase. They have 350 employees, and there was a team member who was on the executive team for many years, but she had just got promoted to COO, and she was feeling really stressed about all of this new responsibility, and she had all these new departments under her. And the CEO in one of our meetings turned to her and said, the best advice I'd ever been given is to build in time to think as the leader. We get so wound up in like having to be there for everybody and having to do all the things that if we don't build in like intentional time to think, we lose our edge. We're not as strategic. We're not as creative. And so what I watched was something so beautiful because she was so overwhelmed. She was feeling like she needed to work 16, 17-hour days, and that still happened. But she then felt like she had permission to go on a hike. So that was her processing time. So the next quarter, she talked about these ideas that came from her hikes that she just had thinking time. So for 2 hours on a Friday morning, she would just go hike South Mountain and think. And it helped improve it. Well, it decreased her stress, but it also helped improve some really creative ideas that helped move some of the departments that were struggling forward. So do yourself a favor, schedule some time to think. Does anyone do those either CEO days or thinking time already? All right. Now let's go to our do's. All right. So it seems like common sense, but we get so in our head and we write paragraphs and paragraphs, or we think we know what we mean, but we're not really clear. So set clear goals consistently. Now, what I mean by clear is you probably all heard of SMART goals, and SMART goals are fine. They are been around forever. They work. They're great. If that's what you love, use the SMART formula. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. For me, my brain is simplify everything. And so I've simplified to CAT goals. And this is what I really focus on with business owners and with myself. So clear and concise, aligned, meaning it feels when you write a goal, you can feel it in your body. Sometimes we write goals because we have this thing in our head that we should do this, or we feel like we need to do this, or even sometimes someone is telling us we need to do this. If you feel that in your body, that's not alignment, and that's not going to be good for the long term. So really make it feel aligned to where you want to go, what you're doing. There's a difference between that fear that you feel of like, oh my gosh, I've never done this. I don't know how to do this, but it feels like I need to do this, versus the like, oh, I don't want to do, like, I know I think I should do this, but I don't want to do this. This feels disingenuous. Like, get good at noticing the difference, because fear is going to show up either way. But when it's I know this is totally aligned and it's going to help my business, and it feels like that's where I need to go, do that. Don't do the, like, I got to double my business because some business coach told me, and it doesn't feel like the right time. The next piece is timely. So that gets to the seasons. So are you in the right season for that goal? And it doesn't mean that it can never happen. Maybe you just need to delay it by a quarter. Or maybe if you're like, I'm in a season where I really need to hustle and get things moving, and I need to increase my goals. So really recognizing where you are on the spectrum of timely. And then the biggest test for a goal is to hand your goal to someone who knows nothing about your business, nothing about what you're doing, and ask them if they can tell you what done looks like. You should ask yourself that time and time again. What does done look like? If they can explain it to you, and they can tell you what like complete would look like, then you've done a really great job. Because we write these ambiguous goals, and when we get to the end of a quarter, we have no idea really what finish looks like. So we get to like, I think I did that. Yeah, pretty much. And you want to think about 100% is done, not 99%. And so you want clear deliverables. So if you're going to create a plan, what is that plan? When is it going to be created by? Who are you going to share it with? Where is it going to be documented? You want to capture those things. And now the trick is, though, without writing a paragraph, you want this to be simple. And the more simple you can make it, the very clear, like this is the deliverable, the better. And you always want to keep the end in mind. So you're not writing your project plan there of like all the different steps. Those will come, but you just want the end result. This is what I want to achieve. Does that make sense? Alrighty. This is another step that a lot of people forget, myself included, but you have to build capacity, right? So our plates are already full. If we're going to add something, you've got to ask yourself, what do you either need to start doing or what do you need to stop doing? And you have to decide if you're really going to commit to it. Because sometimes we say, oh yeah, I'll stop doing that. But then for whatever reason, either we don't want to delegate, or we think that we don't have someone to delegate to, or whatever the reason is, we don't actually do it. And then we just keep piling on our plates, and we get overwhelmed and burnt out. So really thinking through, here's the goals that I want to set for the year and the quarter. And then what am I going to give up or start doing to adjust to make room for this goal? Because there's always a sacrifice or there's a balance. So when you add something, ideally you're taking something off your plate. And if there's things that you are like, there's nothing I can take off my plate, I have to do everything. I really would recommend starting to write down, what do you love to do? What do you like to do? What are you good at but don't enjoy? And in that bucket of good at but don't enjoy, that's usually where it's hard to give up because you're good at it, but it really like sucks all the energy out of you. And once you have that list in front of you, you can get real creative about like, okay, how can I delegate this? Or let me imagine a way or build a plan to begin to delegate this, or change it, or do I need to do this, or can I automate it? Or can I hire someone like Kelly who does all of that for you? So if there's things you don't enjoy as a business owner, Kelly is an amazing resource because her team can just take it off of your plate for you. But really identifying what are those pieces that you need to delegate because it's time, so that you can build the space and capacity. Okay, then this is the next one. Do consider what habit changes need to be made. So I see a big leap from like, we're going to set these goals. So even within large organizations, they set these goals for their team members or the executive team, but there isn't this thought about, okay, well, if this is something new or different, there's something that needs to change. And what is that needs to change? So if it's a sales goal, I need to increase my sales by X. What's the habit that you need to create to do that? And a lot of times business owners are like, I don't know how to get more sales. So really digging into that and this is going to come back to where we're talking about analytics of like, where did your past customers come from? How can you maximize that? Where can you look for new customers that look like that? And then what do you have to do? Like maybe it's, I haven't reached out and talked to anybody or been to a networking event. Well, that's a new habit. And so how can you build that? So then it's once a week, I'm going to go do a networking event or whatever it is, so that you can start to get to achieve your goal. So what are the actual habits that need to happen? I like to work on micro habits. So these are tiny adjustments. They're not huge. Like we think of like habits as like this whole makeover of our whole life. And that doesn't have to be. They're small, tiny adjustments that add up to big results. So I'll give you an example. For me, when I feel like my business is either really busy or just have a lot to do, I'm sure many of you can relate to this. My like self-care and my own routines go out the window because I've got stuff to do. So I'm at my computer for 14 hours a day or 15 hours a day, whatever. But what I was seeing is my creativity, my innovation, my strategic plan, like all of that part of me, and even like my passion was just disappears. And when I actually stop to take the time to go on a walk, to listen to my audiobook, to take care of me, I get the bigger ideas and pieces that I need to grow my business. So as intuitive as it may feel counterintuitive, actually stopping, but building that habit back in when I lose it is really important. So if I have a big quarter, that's the first habit that I think about. Does anyone else have some habits that they do that are similar?
Thanks to your accountability partnership with our health goals is, starting with a little bit of exercise and adding a little more, like you're saying, start with the micro, even if it's a 10-minute walk, or, then keep adding more and more time. And like you said, the more time you give yourself, the more good ideas you come up with. It feels like you said, it feels counterintuitive. You're like, well, I'm going to take away time, from doing what I could be doing, but it's so huge. The self-care part of it and the wellness part of it is such a huge thing that most entrepreneurs miss.
Yeah, for sure. Judy, were you going to say something?
Yeah, for me, it's journaling, because that has gone out the window for me when I get busy. And I found that it's just beneficial for me. Like even if it's only a shorter journaling session in the morning, just to clear my head and get grounded and centered on what it is I want to achieve during the day, or to clear out whatever emotional junk I want to call it. You know what I mean? Just sometimes it's an emotional clearing or a mindset adjustment, but the journaling for me, because when I get busy, I'm like, I don't have time to journal today. I can't do it. And I've learned to, well, maybe I do that at the end of the day instead of the beginning of the day if I'm starting out with the meeting or something. So.
Yeah, exactly. Getting flexible about your time schedule. I used to be so rigid about exercise. Kelly can attest to this, where I'm like, no, I have to do it in the morning. This is my schedule. I can't not do it. And then she was like, what about a lunch walk? What about this? And I was like, no morning. But the second I allowed some flexibility, my whole world opened up. So I think thinking about okay, what is the thing I want to do? And if you can't do it at the perfect time, how can you be flexible? How can you work it in is so important. Because we just get stuck. And then it's so interesting.
Give me my bag, please.
Yeah, I'm eating.
Please.
What is your bag?
I'm just gonna mute you, Nilofer. All right. So this quote I love so much. It comes from Atomic Habits. And I think it's in almost every presentation I do, but it's because it's so powerful. And it just was one of those aha moments for me that I was like, wow, this is true. So every action we take is a vote for the person we will become. So think about that from your strategic planning perspective of when we have those days where we set these goals. it's easy to set a goal, well, relatively easy to set a goal and put it on paper and say, we want to achieve X. But then when it comes down to when we're having that day where it's oh, I really don't want to reply to that email, or I'm so exhausted, I need to whatever, it's whatever our actions are today is going to determine what we are tomorrow. And that's the same for our business. If we don't do the things that we need to do for our business today, tomorrow is going to be a different business. And so I think about that a lot. And I know I want to be careful, because you can take that to the extreme and, always be doing all these things and push past what your body and your mind are telling you. And that's not at all what I'm saying to do. But it's just interesting that when you're given a choice, thinking about what's the consequence of either of those options, and is it getting you closer to where you want to go or farther away? So a good example could be I don't know, if you go to happy hour 3 times in 1 week, or you spend one of those nights to do something in your business that you always said. I don't know who goes to happy hour 3 times a week, but if you do, congratulations. And there is no shame in that. That would be amazing, but you get the point. All right. The last one, and this is a really big one, and I really encourage you to take some homework from here, because this was really powerful for me. And I recently did this in a mastermind, and it was really enlightening for me. So use your data to make informed decisions. So that seems very common sense, but you would be surprised how many business owners just make decisions without any data or analytics. And we do all of this stuff. We do all this marketing, we do all this sales, we do all these emails, we do all these things. And sometimes we never even go back and look and see if it did what we wanted it to do or not. And there's a plethora of information. So this is what your potential homework could be if it resonates with you. So think about all the information that you have, which I have a next slide will show you like some ideas on where you can gather analytics. But the biggest one is your revenue. So pull up, or, you know, in your accounting software, or ask your accountant, or you can actually just add it up if you want, your total gross revenue you had for each month. So each month, what was your revenue? And then based on that, you can start to think about, what do you want to do in the next, like for next year? So if January, let's just use even numbers because I'm not great at math. You did $10,000. What do you want to do in January this year, given everything that you know? So the thing that's important is, because we could just arbitrarily be like, oh, I want to double it, so I'm going to do 20,000. Okay. The next question is, how are you going to get there? But the piece that was really enlightening for me is go back and document what strategies or tactics did you do in January. Now, sometimes it's going to be hard to go back a whole year and remember what you did. If you can, that's great, or start this year. But really, like for me, I did a market that I talked to X number of people that generated X number of leads. Was that a good ROI or not? And then the question is, am I going to do that in the next year or not? It could be, you know, social media marketing, whatever it is. If you can actually document the different things that you did throughout the year, and if you think that those will be happening again, you can get to a more reasonable revenue forecast, because a lot of times we forecast revenue on percentage growth and those sorts of things. And that's a fine way to do it. But if you have the actual analytics and the information, you can narrow it in a little bit more and feel more confident in that number, because you can say, wow, you know, I did this market and no one came to my booth and it didn't work. So I'm not going to invest this X sellers that I would have, but now I'm going to try this different strategy and see if it would work. So the question is, sometimes, where do we get analytics? Well, the good news and the bad news is analytics are literally everywhere. You can get them, but how often do we look at them? So I always recommend business owners have a spreadsheet for their social media. And people sometimes will say, well, like my following is so small, or I don't, you know, have thousands of followers. Why does it matter? But what you're looking for is the trends. So if your posts were, you can start to see a baseline of like, okay, my post did X, you know, this number of views or impressions or likes or shares or whatever. But then this one post had double that, even if it's like it had 22 and now it has 44, you did something different. And when you can identify that and then recreate that and duplicate that, that can help you be more strategic in your business. So where you can get information, social media accounts, they all have them. Payment processors. So if you use Square, Stripe, PayPal, any of those, they have information. Your website, so traffic and all of that. If you do any podcasts, they have analytics there. Accounting software can give you information. Your email marketing system, what's your open rate, what's your click through, all of that. Your notes, so anything that you've taken about events or different things that you've done, if that worked or not. Customer surveys and feedback, that's a really critical one, especially if you're in any business, but service-based specifically, can be really, really important, because if you're tracking that, you can see, for me, I ask for a rating at the end of every session, so I can see where we are and how everyone's feeling about it, but I also can see where I'm trending. And then I ask for feedback, and the feedback that you get from customers is so valuable because it can help you adjust your offering, get better at what you're doing. But you can track that over time and see if your trend is improving or declining or whatever. And then, of course, event attendees, registration platform. There are so many places. Does anyone else have any other sources of information to help guide business decisions that they use? Kelly?
Looking at your calendar for the last year and the next following year for vacation time, or like you said, you know, people are having a baby, or like significant chunks of time that you may be gone. And then the previous year, I I know that in January is my ramp up time. So my main, chunks of income come in these certain months. I mean, looking at calendars is a huge, for me, knowing where I'm going to go and if I'm going to be out of town, and then what I'm doing the other times to ramp up or know when it's the busy season or not.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah. Then maybe I'd actually, well, I guess we went on vacation this year, but it always sneaks up on me. But if we planned it, that's an idea.
If you put it in the calendar, then like, okay, well, this month I know
Mhm.
revenue wise, especially for those of us obviously who, are in service, if,
Mhm.
oh, I have to ramp up then way, way ahead, or I know when I get back, I have to plug in extra things to make
Yeah.
up for those times.
That's really smart. Does anyone track analytics on a regular basis? Kelly? Yeah. Yeah. I do some tracking, but part of my goal for next year is to get much better at it. Cause like for social media, I'll look at the analytics like on my phone or computer, but I don't fill in my spreadsheet as much as I should. And I think if we're going to spend the time and money and energy on doing things, you should know if they're working or not. So, and there's so much info. That's the thing, we can get into overwhelm. So you really, the first step is like, just start tracking these things, pick some, start tracking them. And then once you've got that down, then you can start to like analyze and figure out what the data is telling you. But there's so much at our fingertips that we don't necessarily take advantage of. Okay, and then the last thing I want to say today, or tip, is so much of this, if you read a business book and then you read a different business book and then you talk to somebody there, everyone's going to have different opinions. And ultimately, you need to really trust your own intuition and it will help guide you. So like I was saying with goals, if you're feeling like this goal is out of alignment, really dig into why is that? Maybe it's not the right goal for you, but at the end of the day, like you know what's best for your business. And sometimes we forget that and we start to doubt ourselves or not trust. And we are so powerful. And if we can just get quiet and have the courage to listen to ourselves, the answer is there. And so that's what I really encourage business owners to do, because every time I find somebody or myself externally seeking, like, what should I do? What's the answer? What's the answer? It's because for some reason, there's some resistance to listening to what's happening inside. So I always encourage everyone to turn around and go inside, because there isn't anyone that can tell you the right answer for your business other than you. So, do we have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So this is going back to, I think it was like the CAT goals, on the T for timely. The thing that trips me up on this one is that there's a lot of things in my business that I'm doing for the first time, and I've never done them before. So like, I don't know how to set a timely goal when it comes to something I've never done before, because I don't know how long it's going to take me to do it. I have a little bit less resources than most small businesses. I'm still a solopreneur. So, I'm doing a lot of things myself. And, so anyways, I'm not sure if you have a suggestion. I'm sorry, I have to.
Oh, well, bye, Judy. Susan cliffhanger. I did have a suggestion, so I guess I can tell everyone else, and I'll have to tell, well, Judy can watch this. So the suggestion is to think about timely in the macro and the micro. Macro is this the right time of year? So if I'm going to do my holiday planning, you probably don't want to do that necessarily in January to March, because the holidays are a full year away. So if you're a product business, you want to start doing that in the summer. So thinking about that is like, does it make sense in the market? Is that what the market's going to want? And then for not knowing how long it's going to take, I would break it down into a smaller goal. Like, what is the first step? And then put a time around that. Like, I have 1 month to complete that first step, or I have a quarter to do this research. Because you probably don't know how long the full thing is going to take you, but if you break it down into steps, you can start to give yourself deadlines. All right, so I want to make sure that we're on time. So I have one more thing I want to share that I think most of you already know, but I just want to go through it quickly. So like I said, I was formerly trained in entrepreneurial operating system. I've since created my own strategic planning that is a little bit more catered to smaller businesses. And the way that it works is through the foundation day, where we go through solid, all the things we talked about: your purpose, your mission, your vision, your values, your 3-year, your big goal, your 1 year. All that happens in a foundation day, and then you go into a quarterly planning pulsing. So each quarter you meet either with myself or with yourself, however you do it. You set your quarter goals to be in line with your 1 year, and then we do annual planning, and then it just continues on. The success that I have seen from the system has been absolutely incredible. It surprises me. I don't know why it surprises me, and that might not be the right word, but it's always just so incredible to see that, like, with consistent intention, the power of things that we can create. And so upcoming, I do this once a year. There's 2 options if you're interested in a facilitated strategic planning session. The first one, and I only do this once a year, is the mastermind day. So it's a small group. It's you and 2 other entrepreneurs where we get together, we go through the strategic planning. But the beautiful part of it is you have the mastermind. So you have the group to give you feedback and thoughts and comments on your plan, but you create your own strategic plan. The dates that I currently have available for that is the 5th and the 16th. And then the other option is this private, so it's one-on-one strategic planning, and that I have some dates in December available. So the only difference is it would just be me and you, but you get the same outcome. So I have you get the whole binder and all the material, and you'd walk away with a clear vision for 2023. So those are some options if you are interested. If you have any questions on the strategic planning process, I can talk about it all day long. Would love to connect. You guys all know how to reach me, but in case you forgot, there's my information. And that is all I have for you guys today. And Judy, I'm glad you're back. You scared me.
My battery died. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, good. Wonderful. All right. Does anyone have any last questions or thoughts, comments? All righty. Well, then I will let you guys go. Look for the email with a replay, and in that email will also be the winners of our fantastic prizes. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Happy Thanksgiving. I am so eternally grateful for all of you, and have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Bye.
Bye. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Do you have a minute?
Yeah, let me stop
When
recording.
you're done